Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this another episode of One on One. We have with us tonight our guest Szoreny Latchmea. He is 23 years old and a black belt second dan Aikido instructor. Szoreny Latchmea, thank you so much for being with us in the studio of the MBC.
Good evening, Koyo. It's my pleasure to be here.
So Szoreny, one of the major goals in developing Aikido was to create an art that practitioners could use to defend themselves while also protecting their attacker from injury. That sounds quite different from other martial arts. How do you define Aikido?
Aikido history actually dates back from the times of the samurai. It all started with a very ancient art called the Daitoryu Aikijujitsu. Daitoryu Aikijujitsu was an art perfected by the samurai during the times of civil war. The aim of Daitoryu was to kill the opponent. The emphasis was based on killing. This is why, for example, in Aikido, later on, the founder himself, who was a practitioner of Daitoryu, took all those techniques which were more rigid and turned them into something rounded, more supple, more subtle. And this is how Aikido became what it is today, which is a way to pacify the opponent. We use the traditional deadly forms, but we use them as a bridge to connect to others. This is why actually Aikido has no competition.
So we can say that there's also a philosophical aspect that lies in Aikido. Do you believe that
Definitely.
Aikido is more simply than an efficient self-defense method?
Definitely, Koyo. There's a more philosophical approach to Aikido, and it's all thanks to O-sensei, Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of the art, because he also had a very spiritual background.
Okay.
Yeah. Since his childhood, he actually was kind of gifted, and he would get sort of visions, and later on in his life, he would try to pursue this spiritual path after his in parallel or even after his training in martial arts. He would pursue this spiritual side and join a sect called Omotokyo. It was actually a Shinto sect. Yeah.
What do you mean by Shinto sect?
So Omotokyo, Shinto is the traditional religion of the Japanese people. And so when he joined Omotokyo, he learned the philosophical principles of life, how you have to connect to everything, from a plant, from the tea in the cup, from the fly on the wall. Everything is actually one. That is the philosophy of Aikido. We try to bring everything to a sort of oneness. And through the practice, this is what actually we try to achieve. Unity of mind, body, and spirit.
That's quite unique, I must say. But Szoreny, how did you get involved in Aikido? And what inspired you to pursue it and stick to it when it gets tough?
So I was actually kind of born in Aikido because my father was actually my first inspiration. I used to watch him outside the window. He would take his katana and draw his sword and perform kata. Kata is what we call a series of movement. And that was my first encounter with martial arts. I would watch him from inside the window, and that's what inspired me actually to one day become a martial artist. There was a sort of beauty in that. There was a sort of aesthetic. There was a sort of strength, but combined with elegance. And I always wished to belong to that practice. So one day I asked my father, "Can you bring me, Dad, can you bring me to the classes?" And he said, yeah, as soon as I get kids who are willing to join, this is when you will come. And at the age of 5, I entered my first Aikido class. And since then, it has contained many steps actually to finally reach where I am today.
But were you forced actually to learn Aikido by your father?
Yeah, actually, at first it was a very different experience from right now. It was more like my dad dragging me to the classes at the age of course, as a child, you want to join something. We are always like that. We tend to get interested in one thing and then the other. But in the end, he would always drag me to the classes, always force me to come. And I was very hesitant at first. But I think that deep inside, he knew that this was the kind of investment that he had to put into me. And this is how things were actually made. And at first I would be the troublemaker in the class,
Okay.
actually. Yeah, for 10 years, for the first 10 years, it was more like I was going back and
It
forth.
was more fun for you,
Yeah,
like.
it was more fun. And I remember I was teasing the serious students of my father, actually, and they would tell me, no, you have to do this right, you're not doing the proper movement. But I was not interested in the movement. I was interested more in the fun part of it.
You're fascinated by this martial art. But Szoreny, when did you decide to teach? Was it a matter of choice then?
In fact, in my teenage years, around 14 to 15, I met a very inspiring sensei who came for a visit to Mauritius. His name was John Ratnam. And this man actually lived at our place for a moment, and we trained together in our own dojo, and he kind of inculcated me many values. And it was actually him, along with my first encounter with my father, etc., who together instilled that willingness to teach. They sort of inspired me. And since that day, since those days, from the age of 14, 15, I would start reading extensively about the art. And I would also take pleasure in teaching my fellow students, my fellow classmates as well. And there's something in Aikido that we call the senpai. Senpai is actually the senior student. Mm-hmm. So I would become the senpai. This is how my teaching journey began. I would be the senior. I would attend almost every classes that my father gave. I would attend the seminars. And this is how it went on.
I think it's rightly said. We learn better and we learn more when we teach.
Definitely, Koyo. Definitely.
Szoreny, the purpose of Aikido is often considered to attain a certain unity. What are the means that you use to accomplish that unity?
Right. So let's talk about that unity at first. What does that unity mean? Unity means uniting body, mind, and spirit. You have to align the three. And how is this attained? Coming back to your question, for intense practice, we have to empty the mind. There's something called mushin in Aikido. Mushin is a Japanese term which means no mind. No mind. So we keep the mind empty like a fresh page. We keep the mind like water, as Bruce Lee says. And that's the first step for me to attain this unity. And then it's about training and perfecting your craft. And there's also sincerity that is involved. There has to be a certain level of sincerity in what the practitioner is doing. Because one can try to do techniques and only understand the forms. And if you only do forms, if you learn how to twist an arm, how to break an arm, it takes a very shallow sense.
I think Aikido also means unity in Japanese. Is that true?
Aikido, we will try to translate literally. I means harmony, means a certain balance, and ki means energy, and do means a way, a journey. So to sum it up, Aikido means the way to harmonize energies. And we have to remember that it's a way. We have to make the difference between an absolute and a journey. The way, Aikido is often referred to as the art of peace. But is it really the art of peace? I may ask. Aikido is the way to peace. To me, Aikido is the way to peace. It is not the art of peace. Because if we say to ourselves, I am peaceful, it means that I'm already an absolute. It means that I'm self-proclaiming myself as a peaceful person. But the aim, I think, of O-sensei, of Morihei Ueshiba, the founder, was to create an art which was a journey to accomplish that. And peace is an absolute. Peace will never, in my opinion, can never be completely attained. It's very relative, but it's a journey to that. We try our best to remain very calm, and yeah, so that's it.
I was actually coming to that. Most Aikido classes start with relaxation, stretching exercises.
Stretching,
Why is it important to be mentally and physically relaxed before starting a training?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Koyol. So actually, what we do when we stretch is to condition the body to encourage. Let's come to that at first. A bit of bodybuilding, okay?
Yes.
So the muscle when it stretches, it actually encourages blood flow. Okay, when you elongate a muscle, it actually encourages blood flow. So oxygen will come in, and so you get the better contraction. You get a better you sort of get a more optimal form. That is why we stretch. And also the relaxation part is very important, because one has to relax his shoulders and his body, especially the shoulders, because shoulders, they accumulate so much tension. If I'm always like that, I just have to drop it. Shoulders are very important to relax. As human beings, we tend to have so much ego. So this is why we try to relax the shoulders and be very aligned.
So do you believe that movement speed is a determining factor in Aikido?
Yeah, definitely, but it depends on the level of practice and the age of the person and their physical condition, etc. For example, for children, the application side of Aikido is less prominent. It would be more ludic, more of a game, of a fun activity. Of course, there's the seriousness. There's this aspect of discipline as well, which I try to inculcate to my children. But as we move into more serious practice among adults, among advanced, of course, we have to be very rapid. We have to perform very rapid hand movements. And in Aikido, we're more stoic than active. Compared to other martial arts, sort of something very specific to Aikido, I would say, is that we don't bounce around. We don't have a sort of very bouncy stance, and we don't use guards. You would certainly notice that at first sight. All our hands are always at the waist level. This is because we try to keep an open mind on the situation. We try to not to assume any form. We try to be as formless as possible, because when the attack comes, then we decide what to do.
Exactly, Szoreny. When a person practices Aikido, it appears that he or she isn't trying to really defeat the opponent. The movements are quite circular, and the body of the practitioner always seems to be relaxing. Why is that so?
Definitely, that's a good observation, Koyol. So actually what happens here is that, again, we have different levels. At a more intermediary level, I would say, we are more into something that is very physical, okay?
Yes.
The youngsters, we use more, they tend to use more muscles in general, okay? Because we have more power, etc. But as we age and as the practice matures, as the years under the black belt start to roll, something happens. The person becomes more graceful, more present, and they focus more on doing their thing, minding their business, being into alignment. And for me personally, this is the summum of Aikido. When you detach yourself from winning or losing, there is no expectation in the end. We don't try to defeat an opponent. We don't try to lose either. We do our best to protect our integrity. There's something called ma'ai. Ma'ai is distance.
It's more actually about an internal fight, if you may say.
Exactly.
Yes.
The fight is within more than
With us,
without.
exactly, yeah.
Yes.
Not with our opponent. But Szoreny, how are your classes normally conducted? Do you actually use weapons? Do you include the use of weapons in your classes?
Yeah. So this is a bit debatable. Some sensei say that Aikido is a taijutsu. Taijutsu means the use of only hands and feet, etc., only the use of the body. But Aikido, we have to understand that Aikido's origin is from the samurai. So all hand movements, all techniques that we do, that it's the hand, this part, which has replaced the katana, actually. So we have to practice, in my personal opinion, we have to practice with weapons to sort of get that, that alignment of the body and to visualize properly what we're doing. Because when I do a technique on my students or on my sparring partners, it's always about visualizing how to cut the opponent. How, in my mind, it's a sword that went through. But it's only intentional now. We have removed the sword and it has been replaced by the hands. And actually our founder said a very interesting quote: when you use the sword, make as if you have nothing in your hands. And when you use your hands, make as if you're using your sword.
So, are there any more important techniques in Aikido? What is the principle of all?
So there is no such thing as more important technique in Aikido. I think that the basics have to be here. The basics are what we call taisabaki. Taisabaki is the movement and the basic footwork. We also have to know how to position the body. For example, everything has to be aligned, the hand, all our articulation have to be in the same direction. But apart from that, there's no technique that is more important than the others. We practice locks, more pins, I would say, not locks, but pins, because locks are more physical. Pins are more focused on the hara. Hara means the center of gravity. And we also have throws as well, many throws.
Exactly, striking techniques, which are commonly known as atemi, forms an integral part in Aikido.
Yeah.
So what is the best use of atemi?
So atemi literally means attack, okay? A punch is an atemi. A karate chop, for example, is an atemi. So atemi is a very useful part in Aikido in the sense that we have to learn how to defend ourselves against an atemi. We have to learn how to do techniques against atemi. And also, atemi comes into play to remind the practitioner about one very interesting aspect: distance. If there is no atemi in Aikido, if I'm doing a technique on my partner, we don't say opponent, we say partner, because we're constructing something together. but I have to remind him of his boundaries. Because if my partner grabs my arm and I'm about to perform a technique on him, and if I don't present atemi, for example, then there's no martiality in what we are doing. It will be more like I'm inviting them for a dance, which will be which will not develop the most important reflexes, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. And Szoreny, Aikido is practiced on the tatami, but the teachings must undergo some sort of adaptations in our everyday life.
Absolutely. Actually, the teachings of Aikido, if my students, for example, this is something that I say very often to my students. When they come for classes, if they do 3 hours of classes with me per week, they have to import what they have learned on the mats and apply it to their daily lives. If you work in the office, you have to manage people. If you work in the sports field, any profession, there is application of Aikido. Because Aikido, I will elaborate more on that. So Aikido focuses on 4 main aspects. There has to be a contact. If there's no contact, there's no Aikido. We're doing something else, but not Aikido, definitely. There has to be proper distance between the 2 partners. If there is no distance, there is no martial art. Third thing, we can't in any way give ourselves, turn our back on the enemy. As soon as we present the back to the enemy, we open the back door for an attack to come. And the final point, the 4th point, very important, is engagement. If there is no engagement from the 2 partners, there is no Aikido. So to sum up, those 4 rules can apply to anything. Because at work, in our daily lives, in business, when we try to meet a business partner, there has to be a certain sort of a certain contact. We have to initiate a contact, but a contact doesn't mean that we have to submit ourselves. A contact means it's just like with a handshake, you know. We both stay in our place, in our space, respecting the integrity of my body and the integrity of my partner's body, but initiating a contact.
We can say that in a way, the dojo is like the behind the scenes and life is the stage.
Definitely, definitely. That's a very nice way to put it.
Yes. Szoreny, so share with us a bit what are the psychological and physical benefits that Aikido brings to its practitioners and to you as well.
So let's talk a bit more about, for example, Mushin, which is no mind. No mind means I am approaching life with a beginner's mindset. I empty my cup. When I walk into a new sport, a new activity, when I take a new subject at school, when I take a new module, I try to view it as something new, even if I'd done it before. So Mushin, for me personally, no mind, approaching, having this blank page mindset helped me a lot, because then you become like a sponge and you can absorb many things. Yeah.
So Szoreny, Aikido can be practiced by anyone, irrespective of age or gender?
So actually, there's no such thing as an age limit. Of course, there's a minimum age to enter our dojo. It's 4 years old. But there's no age limit to start Aikido. We can start at any age. For example, one of my students is 42 years old and another one is 48 years old. So it just gives you an idea that one can start his or her Aikido journey at any point in life and still discover things. And sometimes joining Aikido late, relatively late, doesn't mean that you've missed out something. Because maybe the practitioner was not ready at first to step into the dojo. maybe they had to live more experiences and then finally come back to Aikido. So yeah, basically it's about anyone can do Aikido.
It's more about the passion, if we can say.
Yeah, it's more about the passion.
Yes. We are actually drawing towards the end of this episode, but before that, Szoreny, are there any changes that you want to bring in this art form or in its perception?
Absolutely, this is my mission. I have given myself this mission for like a year or two. I now work extensively. I'm a full-time Aikido instructor, and I'm trying to take Aikido to new heights. I'm trying to popularize the art without losing its authenticity. We have to remain traditional, but also cope with the modern changes. Society is changing very rapidly, and we have to adapt to that change, but not forgetting the ancestral values which Aikido contains. So my techniques to answer to that question are using the use of social media and many collaborations to sort of grow my art and promote it as much as I can to people, so that they discover how much beauty, how much philosophy there is in Aikido, actually.
Thank you so much, Szoreny. It was such a pleasure to have you with us and to know more about Aikido.
My pleasure, Koyol.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for your time. We hope to see you next week at the same time, same channel for another episode of One on One.